What's up, my people? We are here this week to talk about how to control big emotions at work. Have you ever been mortified by just how big your emotions are in certain conversations? I'm going to give you tips and strategies and techniques to get that all under control. So like and subscribe if this sounds like something you need right now. I'm Bronwyn Salian-Benny, and I'm a communication coach. What I do as a coach is bring forward the best in people when the pressure is cranked up all the way to 11. I help people figure out how to stand in their authenticity and deliver a message that is memorable, repeatable, interesting, and that breaks through the static of everyday noise. And what I know, the one thing I was put on this earth to do is to help people shine. Look, it's happened to the best of us. Somebody says something or we make a mistake and we just sort of have an out-of-body experience. We burst into tears or we completely close down or we go on the offensive. Look, it is human. Humans experience huge emotional swings. It's the way we're made. But the issue is what you do with those emotions, because here's what I know for sure. When we have huge emotional explosions at work, people don't perceive us as easy to talk to, as able to handle the pressure, right? They perceive us as fragile. And we're not into being fragile, my friends. That is not what we are here to be. So what I want to do is offer you some thoughts. Number one, get a plan together when you're not triggered. Right? So if you know that there's a certain person or a certain situation that just always gets under your skin, have a plan, think about it, deconstruct it when you are relaxed, calm, at your best. So for example, let's say after watching this video, you feel fabulous and you feel like you got it sorted. That is the perfect time to be planning for the next potential meeting that might trigger you. Let's say you have a review coming up with a manager that you're convinced doesn't like you, and you know it's going to be a big emotional roller coaster for you. Let's talk about what you're going to do before you get into that meeting. Because in the moment, it's a hell of a lot harder to control things. Beforehand, you can actually make a plan. So let's take that as an example. You have this review coming up. You know that it could get tense because you feel like you're not really connecting with your manager and you don't know what they're going to say to you, right? In advance of that meeting, you really want to unpack it. You want to ask yourself a few questions. Namely, what does this dynamic remind me of? A lot of times the people that solicit the biggest emotional reactions from us remind us of something else. Maybe you grew up with a super critical parent and that still haunts you. Maybe you grew up in a household where nobody ever criticized you and they told you were the queen and king of everything. And so you're always caught off guard when somebody gives you feedback. Really trace it back. What does this remind you of? And once you've done that, I want you to think about decoupling it from that history. Because it's not totally fair. I mean, it's human. We bring our entire biographies to every conversation we have, but it's not always the most constructive way to be. So if you can disconnect those old narratives, those old relationship dynamics from the present moment, that's helpful, because guess what? Your manager, they're not your mom or your dad or your brother or your grandfather, whoever it was that was either too critical or not critical enough. Maybe having a mantra like, my only job in this conversation is to be present, is to listen, and to thank them for whatever feedback they have for me. I can process my emotions later, and we'll talk about that more as we get through this. But I want you to disconnect it. Let me give you an example. I was working with this guy, and he was an ex-Apple executive. He was so successful. He was such a badass. And when he would get disappointed in something I did, I would lose my natural mind. I'd be like in the bathroom, like fetal position, sucking my thumb. I hated to disappoint this guy. I just thought he was the bomb. And when he was disappointed, he would do certain things, like he would sigh a certain way. He would make a certain gesture. And I would fall apart. And I went to my therapist. This was years and years ago. He said to me, Bronwyn, why are you turning him into your stepfather every time he's disappointed in you? And I was like, oh my God, that is so embarrassing. How is it possible that I'm a grown woman, even though I was a lot younger then? How is it possible that I'm a grown woman bringing my dynamic with my stepfather to bear on a relationship I have with this guy at work? It's so lame. Also very human. But once I was able to disconnect the two and understand that sometimes this guy's going to be disappointed in me because I'm new. I'm young in my career. It's literally my job to give it my best shot, make mistakes, learn, and keep going. And as soon as I was able to disconnect those two dynamics, everything changed. We were able to work together so much more effectively. Now, what I want you to know is when you get triggered, when you feel that huge emotion rising in you, your job in that moment is to take care of your physiology, yourself. And how do we do that? We breathe. I know I'm a broken record, but I'm telling you, you cannot access your thinking brain until you've taken your breath, until you've breathed into your belly through your nose and sent a signal to your brain that everything's going to be okay. All right? You cannot affect your psychology. You cannot communicate effectively if your brain is freaking out, hitting the 911 button. So the first thing you have to do is breathe. Take care of yourself. In that moment of breathing, you can send a quick signal to yourself. Look, we will process this huge emotion later. Right now, we need to be present. We need to extract information. We need to gather more information. We need to understand someone else's point of view. And that is how you come back to center. So you have a plan going into the meeting. You've disconnected whatever pattern you've attached to this difficult situation or person. And then when you do get triggered, you take care of yourself by breathing, by telling yourself it's okay. You'll be able to process your big emotions later. Right now, your job is to listen, to ask good questions, to get back to center. So let's say you get back to center, you're able to engage, you're able to understand whatever it is that's coming at you, whatever difficult feedback or difficult whatever it is, and you deal with it. Now, after that meeting is over, and this is the critical piece, when that thing is done, and you have shown up and you've gotten yourself under control and you have perceived and gathered data, now you need to go process the big emotions in private or somewhere safe or with someone safe. Let me give you an example. Recently, I made a mistake, a legitimate mistake. For me, making a mistake is a huge trigger. That's what triggers my big emotions. I feel terrible if I've let somebody down. I feel so terrible. And it was so affecting for me. But I knew in that moment, I can't, you know what? Right now, I'm not here to process my emotions. I'm here to make it right. So I worked with the person, I made it right. But as soon as that was done, I took the time to process my emotions. How did I do that? I called a friend. I actually called my business coach and I said, oh my God, I made this colossal mistake. I feel so bad. I've recovered. I've made it right, but I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop beating myself up about it. And he said, it's okay. That's a really big emotional signature for you. That feeling of shame, that feeling of having disappointed someone. It's a big deal for you. You're allowed to recover. You're allowed to give yourself some time to just take care of yourself. So that's what I did. I went on a long walk with my dog. I listened to some sad music. I pushed and exercised that emotion through my physical body. And when I came back and sat down at my desk, I felt so much better. And this is what we don't talk about. We do not talk about in corporate America, in business, actually anywhere around the world. We do not acknowledge the emotions that we experience during a given day at work because they're like this. And we have to have little pockets where we're processing those emotions because they're real, they're legitimate, but we cannot let them run our meetings. Do you know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is do the work to figure out what triggers you. Get ahead of it. Get a plan in place. When you're in the moment being triggered, take care of yourself by breathing, by telling your brain it's gonna be okay. And then when you've left the meeting, and you've listened and you've gathered as much information as you can, go and process your emotions. Give them space. Some of us like to journal. Some of us like to walk. Do what it takes. Honor your humanity. That's what I'm saying. Look, I hope this was helpful. If this has happened to you, drop me a line, give me an amen. Tell me what's working for you. Tell me what you're going through. And if you want to see an episode dedicated to something specific that you're dealing with, I call those my Dear Bronwyn sessions, like Dear Abby, only cooler. So drop me a note, like and subscribe. I'm trying so hard to get to 1,000 subscribers, and every subscription matters to me. So thank you if you already have, and maybe tell a friend. I will see you next week.